Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and old lang syne? For old lang syne, my Joe, for old lang syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. Welcome to the Ivory Attic. I'm Ian Isherwood.
And I'm Kurt Andreessen.
And that, of course, is the song that we all forget the words to and sing on New Year's Eve.
Did you say Joe at some point?
Yeah, it's in the original.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the original lyrics.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and in the original Scots verse.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You didn't do it. I've noticed you didn't do it with a Scots accent.
No, I didn't, because that would be not great.
It would be really bad.
Yeah, we're not into accents.
Yeah.
On the Ivory Attic, right?
Well, I mean, they're okay. They're okay if they're natural.
Right.
I mean, we all have accents.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant.
Ian, we all have accents.
Yeah.
We all come from different places.
No, I get. Thank you. I get that. I'm not gonna dig myself deeper. I'm just gonna say you knew what I meant.
Sounds great.
All right. Welcome again to the Ivory Attic. We have a special guest for this episode. We decided that we were going to do an episode that had to do with cocktails because New Year's Eve...
I love cocktails.
I know you love cocktails because New Year's Eve is right around the corner.
That's a good time. It's a good time to bring out your best cocktail recipes.
Well, and that's it. And so, fortunately, we both know somebody who has written a book that's available on Amazon.com. Have you heard of Amazon?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a new thing.
Okay, cool.
It's a new thing, but a book...
Do they sell books?
Yeah, they do sell books. Yeah, they sell other stuff too. But,
okay.
But I think
I thought it was just a book place.
Well, I think they're primarily a bookseller.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So the book is called 10 Cocktails Adults Should Know. And
That's a great title.
It's an amazing title. And it's by the one and only, the author who's in studio right now, Kurt Andreessen.
Well, thanks for having me, Ian.
We are so lucky to have you on the show to talk about your book, your cocktail book.
Oh, man. That's great. I'm so excited to talk.
Well, I'm sure you are. And where's it available again?
Amazon.com. Unless you know me, in which case you can just hit me up, and then I'll sell one directly to you with an autograph.
So I wanted to begin with a staged reading that I'm going to do of your words.
Actually, I really like this. This is
all right,
good.
Great.
I want to hear. Actually, when I was writing it, I heard your voice.
Oh, that makes me so happy because when I was proofreading it for you, I also heard my voice.
Good.
So this is from the introduction.
All right.
And the reason I picked this is because I thought that the prose was really striking. It had just this beautiful minimalism with the right level of depth that we should be getting.
They actually call me the Hemingway of Gettysburg.
Well, and clearly you're the Hemingway of Gettysburg's cocktail writer's circuit. Okay. Serious face. Cocktails mean many things to me. At their most basic, they are a way for you to take a couple of minutes to make something a little fancy and interesting. They are fun to look at, fun to drink, and make you feel like an adult when you serve one. While I enjoy wine, beer, straight liquor, a cocktail is something special in that it is made uniquely every time. Part of the excitement is in the making. Hearing a cocktail being shaken, watching it being poured, or carefully placing a garnish is all a wonderful experience, which is why you should always sit at the bar at a good cocktail bar. Finally, a cocktail is ephemeral. It is cold and delicious for only a brief amount of time. The cocktail is sublime and fleeting, like all great experiences. Let it remind you to always enjoy wonderful things like cocktails, good food, friends, and loved ones when you can. That line has stuck with me. It is cold and delicious for only a brief amount of time. It is sublime and fleeting. It is so beautiful.
I liked Sublime and Fleeting.
Me too, because it has the right level of both cheerfulness and darkness to it.
Well, it's funny you mentioned this. Actually, I was so there's a production of A Christmas Carol that I had seen recently, where they actually changed some of Dickens' prose. And there's the line that goes somewhere around, slightly paraphrasing, but about us being fellow passengers to the grave, and they changed it to fellow travelers through life, which is wrong.
That is wrong. No, I don't like that at all.
No, because the darkness is the point. Like,
It absolutely is, because the stakes are really high.
that's the whole thing. You don't have stakes when you're going along. It's
Travelers through life.
Oh, it's like it's nails on a chalkboard.
Because the one thing we have in common is death.
That's the whole point.
That's the entire point.
It's the whole point.
So what made you write a book on cocktails?
Well, so actually, the reason was I was actually talking. This was inspired by talking to some students. Funny enough. And so I was actually,
students like cocktails.
They do, but they don't know anything about them by and large. And so I was talking to some students, and I was actually serving them some cocktails at my house. They were all over 21. Those were seniors as they were leaving, and they were talking about like
A parting glass kind of situation.
It's exactly a parting glass. And they were saying, this is great, but we don't know how to do any of this. And I thought, this is a fundamental skill. This is something that we have failed you at Gettysburg College, because we're supposed to get you prepared for life. And one of the things that you should be prepared for is whenever someone comes over, to be able to make them a cocktail, to just kind of make life move a little bit better. And so I decided I would write what was initially supposed to be a pamphlet about how to make cocktails, and then it grew.
It became a manifesto.
It did.
and I think you say it beautifully in the dedication. You say, dedicated to all who are being dragged kicking and screaming into adulthood. It isn't quite so bad most of the time.
Especially when you have a cocktail in your hands.
That's right. So this is great. I mean, what a didactic concept, right? You're there and you're just trying to be not only a font of physics wisdom, but also of life wisdom.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so you decided on a group of cocktails. How did you decide on these specific cocktails?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, some were really easy. So, for instance, something like the martini. I don't think you're not going to do a cocktail book without that. There's also, I was at least partially inspired by a book that was written by the owners of Death and Company, where they basically point out that there's only 5 cocktails in the world, and they basically break them down. And I won't have to go through them, but basically, I wanted to make sure that there was one from each type of those things. And the idea is that all cocktails are basically 5 different cocktails, but with variations on it. And so I was trying to capture some of those ideas, but I also just wanted really good tasting cocktails that were pretty easy to make without owning a lot of liquor.
Well, no, that's a key thing. And you mentioned this in the book too, right? Yeah. Because I think one of the things that's very intimidating is having to build a bar for yourself.
Right. No, and it can be super expensive, especially for people. When I was actually thinking of my students, and I was thinking, like, if they came to me and said, I want to be fancy doing cocktails, but I'm just going out on my first job or going to grad school or something like that, what can I do? I'd be like, these are the 5 or 6 things you should buy, and you should be able to make a ton of things with these types of things. So that was my idea behind it.
Yeah, well, and I think that's really smart, and it got me thinking about when I graduated from college and had my first apartment, like what kind of bar we had. Exactly. And it was, we had like 3 things.
Exactly. No.
Right.
Yeah. That was true for me.
Yeah.
Even into the beginning of my cocktail phase, because again, like, you just can't afford it. That is no longer true for me. I currently have 3 bars filled with lots of liquor.
Yeah, well, I've been to your house, and but that's also because you're making a lot of different types of cocktails, because you literally wrote a book on cocktails.
I am. And I've built them up over time. So if you buy 1 bottle, every couple of months, and you don't drink too fast, you can get by all right.
Which, you've been to my house, we have a very different philosophy.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, because we just buy things that we like.
Sure, which is good.
Which is great. But we're also like, me, I tend to just fall back on the same cocktails that I really enjoy.
Although I think glancing at your bar, I think you could probably make all of the things in this book.
Oh yeah, I think I could.
I think you could.
Yeah, definitely.
You have like one bar, like what? You have maybe 20 bottles, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think between those, I think you could do everything there.
But there's also there's also a cellar in the basement too.
When you also have really good stuff,
right?
That you don't offer to me.
Yes. I mean, I do sometimes.
Special occasions.
So let me just run through the cocktails that are in it, if you don't mind.
Okay, absolutely.
So we have
because I never remember.
Yeah, we have the martini, we have the gin and tonic, we have the Manhattan, old fashioned, daiquiri, highball, mint julep, the Negroni, champagne cocktail, whiskey sour. So those are the main ones that you picked. So what do you think is the hardest one to make?
The hardest one to make is definitely the whiskey sour. That's why I put it last.
So what makes your whiskey sour so difficult?
Yeah, so
because you could just buy sour mix.
You could absolutely just buy sour
mix, or you could just pour some lemonade.
Yeah. So I mean, I am a pretty firm believer in that a really good whiskey sour, one that I will actually drink, needs to contain a couple of really important things. One is it has to include fresh squeezed lemon juice, because you can definitely taste the difference between that and bottled lemon juice, or even the sour mix, things like that. The other thing though is that I really strongly feel that you need to have an egg white in there, and part of the reason for that is that and I'll try not to get too cocktail geeky on you, but I will for a second. Is that so in whiskey there are tannins. So there's these like things that kind of make the same things that in a red wine that's been oaked very long, right? Like kind of. So there are those types of tannins in that, and they tend to
It tends to be what people blame their hangover on, is the tannins, rather than the 9 drinks you
exactly,
have, right?
Rather than the poison alcohol. Right. But so it turns out those tannins can really clash with the flavors of the lemon juice, or the fresh lemon juice, because they're just very different flavors, and they tend to not always work great together. And so what happens is when you put in the egg white, it kind of bridges the gap between those. Okay. It pulls some of the tannins out, mellows out the whiskey a little bit, so that the whole experience is much nicer. It also gives us this gorgeous frothy top to it, which is really
it does have a nice texture. Yeah. The first whiskey sour you made for me, I noticed the frothiness, and you were quite proud of it and gave it to me, and you didn't tell me there was an egg white in it.
Oh, I never do.
Yeah. But I was fine with it, because
everyone always is eventually. That's why I don't tell them at first.
Yeah, because the likelihood of it killing me.
You shouldn't. I mean, you generally. I was gonna say you should be a little selective with it, right? Because people have like health issues, okay.
Right, sure.
Yeah. But generally, if you buy fresh eggs and ones that you have experienced with in the past, you're basically free, good to go.
And if you don't have an allergy, right?
Exactly.
So what do you think is the easiest to make?
Gin and tonic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean they're wonderful. And so the great thing about gin and tonic is that they're a phenomenal drink, and they're very straightforward to make. The only way you can mess it up is by not putting enough gin in. it's the only fault that they can have is too tonic-y.
Yeah, no, that is true. One of the things we like to do is lime the glass too.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. I like that.
Yes, that's a nice technique to just get it. Get that lime.
Yeah,
forward.
get it really lime. Yeah. That's really nice. I like that. I also, if I'm making the thing I like about the gin and tonics is that the way that we celebrate the beginning of summer at our house is to stand out on the deck and have a gin and tonic. It is one of the greatest celebrations you can do.
Yeah.
It's just to sit there, you watch some birds fly over, you celebrate the fact that you're standing outside in shirt sleeves and that you can enjoy a gin and tonic.
Do you see it as a seasonal drink?
I mean, yes, but I drink it all the time. So, I definitely drink a lot. So for me, all of my drinks are relatively seasonal in that, like, I definitely shift my patterns from, let's say, more, gin-based and lighter drinks in the summer to more dark and, earthy flavors and brown liquors in the winter. But I also, there is no time when I will not have a gin and tonic, and there's no time when I will not have a martini.
Yeah.
There's also no time I won't have a Manhattan. I'll have Manhattan in the middle of summer, and it's still wonderful.
Right. And especially, like a bourbon Manhattan in the summer is very nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah. No, it's a great drink. Yeah, we tend to be seasonal with the gin and tonic, but that is mostly just because it's so refreshing in the summer.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's wonderful.
It's a great hot weather drink. But I think naturally, our taste buds kind of change in the winter, right? You want things that are kind of deeper and maltier.
You want your stew. You want your malty beers.
Yeah,
you want your absolutely.
Yeah. So, which drink do you think appears to be simple but can be kind of screwed up easily?
Yeah, that's an easy one. It's the daiquiri.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the daiquiri is, and in fact, And this is I should make clear. This is the daiquiri. Just in case people, because when I was growing up, what I thought of as daiquiri had strawberries in it and was generally blended. This is a classic daiquiri, which is basically rum, simple syrup, so something to sweeten it, and lime juice, and that's it. It's difficult because it's a very simple drink, and so it's very easy to screw up because there's nowhere to hide.
Okay.
And it actually is. If you ever apply for a bartender job at a very fancy bar, so like at these really nice cocktail bars, it almost always is the test that is given to you, or one of the tests that's given to you. Yeah, they ask you to make a daiquiri, and if you make a daiquiri well, then maybe you get on to the other tests. But it is actually one of the big things that they actually test people on.
Wow.
Yeah. So actually, everyone has kind of all bartenders have their signature daiquiri that they make, and that they probably actually made for their interview into the to get their bartending job.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna look at this as a pedagogical book, right?
Sure.
So let's say you're a young person, you're coming out of college or something like that. You're going to a cocktail party, maybe a fundraiser or something like that.
Sure.
What do you think you order?
What do I order? Okay. A
Jaeger bomb?
Yeah, absolutely. No. I think. I mean, again, if I don't trust where I am, I'll normally get a martini.
Okay.
Because most people have been trained to make some sort of okay martini at some point.
Okay.
And so that is relatively straightforward. If I think that they are okay and know what they're doing, I'll often order Manhattan. Okay. Because those are good. And most people can make them pretty well.
Do you ever look at the bottles of vermouth and wonder how long they've been there?
Yes. I mean, I was at a place once where, as someone was ordering the sweet vermouth, they pulled open. They're just fruit flies.
Ooh,
flying
ooh,
everywhere.
that's some aged vermouth.
No, exactly, yeah. And the better thing was it was on the shelf. This is a little home tip. You don't have to read my book to do this. Sweet vermouth, all vermouths really need to be stored in the refrigerator.
Yeah, definitely.
they go bad quickly.
But that's a good tip though, because they'll last for a long time in the refrigerator.
Oh, they last for a really long time in the refrigerator. But I used to think that wasn't true. My recommendation is if you do ever have a bottle that sat out on at room temperature for approximately a month or longer, open up a brand new one and taste them side by side. Which I did.
And you'll notice a huge difference.
Huge difference.
So let's go back to the martini.
Yes.
What makes your martini so good?
Well, here's the funny thing, and I mentioned this in the book. The great thing about all martinis is that the correct way to make them is argued over vociferously between all people.
Well, it's funny because when I was prepping for this, I was going through, I don't have quite the large cocktail book library that you do, but I have a modest group of cocktail books, and I was looking through my cocktail books, of which your book stands alongside of all the other ones. And I will say that the prose in yours is far superior to most of these.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Very good.
But there was a book that came out in the 90s. I think it was called Shaken and Stirred, and it was about like the history and variants of the martini. Yeah. And someone bought it for me. I forget who, but I was then reading it or having a look at it again, and I was like, man, what is with people? It's not a difficult drink to make.
It's not a difficult drink
and honestly, the variations are not that significant. If it's a classic gin or classic vodka martini, like pretty much what you're served is going to be fine as long as it's strong and cold.
It should be fine.
Right?
It should be fine. Yes. No, and I think that's it. And I actually change the way I make it sometimes. I do, and it depends partly on so of course one of the classic arguments people have is like whether it should be shaken or stirred. And according to normal cocktail rules, it should be a stirred drink because it doesn't have any. So normally you only shake drinks that have lemon or lime juice, so some sort of citrus juice. It doesn't matter. The main difference is that when you shake things, they get really cold and they get a little more diluted. And then when you stir them, they end up not quite as cold and a little less diluted.
Yeah.
But I like both of them.
Yeah.
If it's a really hot summer day, I normally shake my martinis because I want it ice
You
cold.
want it super cold.
And I want a little bit more water in it, to be honest, because I
Yeah.
should probably be drinking it a little bit slower in the hot sun. Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, the only thing for me is if you're doing a gin martini, I really want to make sure you have some vermouth in there. I don't want
You want to
straight
taste
gin.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want the straight gin. It doesn't have to be a ton, but I do want a little bit. I want to be able to taste that. It's a little bit less true with vodka martinis because vodka and vermouth sometimes don't marry quite as well. And I also, while I don't personally like dirty martinis, I do like extra olives in my martini because then it feels more like a meal.
Right. Well, you've always no. Well, you said to me, I think this was 10 years ago or something. You said to me, one of the reasons I love a martini is because you get a snack with it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it's a really good snack because it's gin-soaked olives,
which is always
which you
great.
don't have that often.
That's right.
Except for in martinis.
and if you do, you're wasting a gin.
Right, exactly. Or your olives. I don't know.
Right. So looking at these, I mean, one of the things that I was thinking was that the cocktails you picked tend to ebb and flow in kind of popularity, right?
Yeah.
So they're, martinis have kind of come and gone and had all different types of iterations, right, over time,
Sure.
where everything was called a teeny. And you say that's very unfortunate that they did in the 90s. You're like very critical about that,
Yeah.
which for good reason. I mean, I think you and I are both kind of traditionalists when it comes to the definitions of some of these, right? But then if you remember, like in the aughts or the early teens of this century, right, the old-fashioned was on a resurgence. I think because of Mad Men, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so we saw all these different types of old fashions that were coming out. One of the things I like about your old fashioned is its basic simplicity.
Oh yeah, no, I really like old fashions to be. I think the more minimal, the better. I think of them as more an improved. Whatever your base liquor is, whiskey, often whiskey. So I just think of it as an improved version of that. So it's that with some extra little flavors on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
But like you mostly should just be tasting the alcohol pretty straight, like whatever base you're using. So if it's a bourbon, you should be able to taste the bourbon.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a little bit of stuff on top, and kind of the fun thing is like, I mean, the basic old fashioned is, it really is just some spirit, a little bit of some sort of something sweet, and then some bitters.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is that you can have nearly infinite variety just by playing with those different things. So for instance, as we get into the winter months, I really like to use for my my sweetener a little bit of maple syrup to get a little bit of the kind of warm
Maple
feelings.
bourbony.
Exactly. And then we also I have some really nice nut bitters, so you can put some nut bitters, and then you get
like
this
walnut
kind of,
bitters and things like that.
Exactly. You get kind of a nice little this feels kind of holiday-ish.
You also get weird and ambitious with smoking it too occasionally.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that's just fun. I mean, and it looks cool. I mean, listen, fire is a really fun thing to play with.
Oh yeah, especially when you're drinking. Right?
Exactly. Well, and yes, exactly. I was considering including more flamed or on fire drinks in my but it's you get into liability issues
Well,
with
I think
that.
so, and I think it's also good to start simple, right?
Yeah. But there used to be this drink. I made it once. It's actually a historical drink. It's from the early 1920s. But there's a relatively famous drink at the time that was called something. I want to say it's called the Blue Flame.
Oh yeah. Where there's like air flame, right?
Yeah. So what you do is you basically like take scotch. And like some lemon and sugar, but yeah, you basically light it on fire and then you pour it back and forth between two mugs. It is fascinating. I did it twice. The first time I did it outside. The second time I did it inside.
Oh wow.
And then I was forbid by certain members of the household from doing it again.
I think that's probably for the best, right? And even outside, because you have a wooden deck.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and here's the real reason I stopped. It actually, at least the version I made, it did not taste good.
Right.
And from what I've read, it didn't taste that good back then either. It just was very exciting.
Yeah, they have different standards. It's one of these things that sometimes, tastes change, drinks have different trends and things like that.
Absolutely.
One of the things, and this will make me sound really foolish because I'm sure that a fellow historian is going to like correct me for this. But one of the things that I think about is like people in the 1920s and 1930s, I think they were dehydrated a lot of the time, right?
Sure.
So because they're not like they didn't have the hydration culture that we have right now.
Absolutely
right?
not. They
And
weren't
so-
carrying around water bottles.
No, they're not carrying around
Yeah.
water bottles unless you're in the military, and you're probably dehydrated then. But they also smoked a lot.
They did smoke a lot.
And so I think that they tended to drink things that were just stronger and bitterer,
Yeah.
right?
Well, because they burned off a lot of their taste buds.
Exactly. No, exactly. And so when you look at some of these drinks, you're like, ugh. But at the same time, they couldn't really taste that much, I don't think.
Well, yeah, one of my favorites. There's actually along those lines. There's a great cocktail from that era called the Pink Gin.
Oh, I love the pink gin.
Yeah, when the Pink Gin, it's funny because
Because
you
it's
hear
just
it.
gin and bitters.
Right, well, you hear it and you think, oh, like that's
gonna be great.
that's going to be like for people who aren't that interested in drinking. Like it's pink and it's gin and there's a Agatha Christie novel where where it plays a really big role and at that time like all the ladies are like ordering the pink gins and like they're like, and then so I went and made this because I thought, well, this sounds like fun, like it sounds like a fun drink, and yeah, it is just gin, a couple dashes of bitters to make it pink.
Yeah.
And then made cold.
Right.
I mean, it is a bracing drink.
It is. It is. And you think like, oh, this looks like a nice summer drink. And you're like, no, this is a...
No. Yeah, no, if you're like, martinis are a little too weak for me,
Right.
then you should go for the pink gin.
The straight gin might upset my stomach.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw some bitters
No,
in.
exactly, because it's medicinal.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about old fashions, I was thinking about like changing trends. And one of the things I like about your old fashioned is that it's not, you keep the garnish very minimalist with it. And because I remember for years, I thought the old fashioned was like kind of like not a strong drink for some reason. And I think the reason I did was because my grandmother used to order an old fashioned when she went out.
Sure.
And then it had all this like muddled fruit in it because the older old fashions that they made in like the 50s and 60s oftentimes have like all of that fruit that's muddled in the bottom. And so I always thought it was like a fruity drink. And then I ordered my first old fashioned when I was in my 20s and I was like, well, my grandmother was drinking a strong drink, right? She
hitting it hard.
It's got some weird fruit in it, but other than that, it's a pretty strong cocktail.
No, I mean it is. I think it's that's the strongest drink in my book. Because even
I mean the Manhattan's kind of watered down a little bit.
Well, I was gonna say because even the Manhattan has a bit of sweet vermouth and the Martini has some dry vermouth. But I mean, again, there is the only extra liquid you're getting with a
slowly melting ice.
I was gonna say a little bit of melting ice,
yeah,
a little bit of like simple syrup and a tiny dash of bitters, but it is basically at proof for whatever liquor. But that's what's nice about it, is it evolves nicely. So it starts that strong, and then as you let it sit, it kind of mellows as it goes through time. Which is fun with.
It's funny because we went to a whiskey tasting, the two of us, and they were all pretty hot whiskeys, so pretty high proof whiskeys, and one of the things you realize is after the first few sips, once your mouth adjusts to it, you can finally start to taste things. But at the begining, it's just burning, right?
Exactly.
And it's similar to an old fashioned, right?
Absolutely.
The first few sips, you're like, this is just kind of strong, burny, bourbony.
Yeah.
Strong,
well, we were also drinking.
rye.
We were drinking a warm too, which makes
and it got less burny over time.
It does.
What final advice do you think you'd give people from your book?
I would just say I think the whole point of the book is that I think there are things I like about what the general thought is about cocktails. The general thought about cocktails again are that they're fancy, they're for special occasions, things like that. And I love that. I think that's great about it. They should look pretty. They should be enjoyable to look at. They should be exciting to do. But what I'm really trying to do is trying to point out that they're not difficult. You don't need to spend a bunch of money to do them. Just find a couple of them that you like. Start doing those, and then if you keep liking them, do some more. and then eventually you'll get a nice collection of stuff that you like to serve to people.
Well, I think that's great advice. I will, and I will build upon it using your own words, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because one of the things that I was so happy about in reading this in manuscript, by the way, there are not many times I read books in manuscript, but this is one I read in manuscript and was quite taken with it, but especially based on the optimism and the idea that you were trying to show people that cocktails aren't just about drinking, they're about fellowship. Right?
Absolutely.
And they're about process, and they're about learning something and enjoying something that you're creating, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that the way you end the book, and you should buy the book, you should all read the book, but in closing, I think you end with that sense of optimism. And you say, make sure that you share this joy. As much as cocktails are enjoyable on their own, they're infinitely more enjoyable with a friend, a loved one, a colleague, or even a stranger. Being an adult can be hard at times, and there will be many things you can't control. However, you can always be ready to celebrate life's joys with a drink and a cheer surrounded by your fellow human beings. And that has been my experience with you. Maybe it's because we're around the holidays. I'm getting a little bit sentimental right now.
That's right.
But I will say that when you wrote about the fact that they are infinitely more enjoyable with friends, I have been very grateful to share many cocktails with you, most of which you've made for me. And I am very grateful that you wrote this book.
Well, I'm grateful to you as well. And thank you for being there and being the one that I often share a cocktail with.
And I'm always here for that.
Well, speaking of which, I brought a special gift, which is that I brought for us not one, but two cocktails, both out of the book. That we and our listeners can actually enjoy for New Year's Eve.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Let's fix up some New Year's Eve cocktails.
All right, well, we'll take a quick break while I'm making it, and then we'll come back here and have some.
That sounds great. Welcome back to the Ivory Attic. I hear some shaking.
All right, so Ian, what I'm doing right now is called a dry shake, which is a weird name. But what it means is you're actually, because it's very wet, everything's wet. But what you're actually doing is you're actually shaking things up without ice in them.
Well, yeah, because I'm not hearing any ice.
No, there's no ice yet.
I'm just here. There. Okay, I thought you forgot it.
No, it's going to be followed by a wet shake.
Okay. Oh, that sounds more like a shake.
That's the wet shake. All right, so Ian, I just handed you a cocktail. What do you see in front of you?
Well, I see something. I see some liquor in a glass that is a kind of ruddy, sort of ruby color.
Yeah, maybe a little Christmassy red.
It is a little bit Christmassy red with a frothy top and a sprig of something.
Uh-huh, exactly. Well, let's go ahead and try it and see what you think.
Oh, that's delightful. What?
Yeah.
Now, what is it?
Does it remind you of anything?
Thanksgiving.
I love it. This is called a Negroni flip.
I was going to say it's a Negroni, right?
It is a Negroni.
Yeah.
So I was trying to make up for our last cocktail. I feel like I really gave egg white shaking a bad name by giving you your gravy colored cocktail. And I wanted to show you that it can actually make really delightful cocktails. So what this is it's basically a Negroni. It just has an egg white added to it, and then you shake the egg white and you shake it with the egg white. And so it creates this really nice kind of frothiness to it. It turns the drink from a reddish color to a nice like kind of pinkish color. Pinkish color.
It's the color of your face after drinking a few of these.
Exactly right. It's I actually first had this at a bar in Boston called Drink, which made some really, really wonderful cocktails. And they just,
Because if they didn't, they're in the wrong business.
they did, and they I saw the person pour out this bright pink drink, and they did quite traditional drinks. They kind of prided themselves on not doing anything that novel. So they weren't chasing trends. They were trying to do classic drinks. And so I was surprised to see something so pink. And so I said, what are you actually doing there? And they said, well, it's a Negroni flip. And so, so it's one of my favorites. It's nice. It takes a Negroni, kind of pulls it back a little bit, doesn't make it quite as bracing as they normally are. And again,
And is that from the egg white that mellows it?
It's egg white that mellows it, yeah. So it grabs a hold of kind of some of the bitterness and kind of hides those flavors away. And then
that's interesting. I mean, one of the things you also do is you teach a class at the college on the science of cocktails too.
That's right. Not to students.
No, right. but it's to alumni, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and we talk all about this. We talk about the different parts, and it's actually going to be the subject of my next book, which is actually looking at the science behind some of the cocktails that we do.
Well, that sounds amazing. What a great teaser for us. Well, we'll have to have you back on the show when you write that one.
Yeah, it sounds great. All right, Ian. So again, because it's our special before New Year's Eve, and we're talking about cocktails, I thought it just wouldn't be right to just bring you one cocktail. So I brought you a second one.
And you know me, I mean, I'm usually one and done.
I do. Well, this one's a special one though, for a real celebratory. So let's go grab it.
All right, sounds great.
All right, so Ian, I've given you something that doesn't look like a cocktail yet. What are you seeing right now?
I see a glass of sparkling wine or champagne.
That's exactly right. So, but this is an exciting one in that you're going to make the cocktail.
Really? You're going to trust me to make a cocktail?
I sure do. Here, go ahead and take one of these.
This looks like a sugar cube.
It is a sugar cube. It's a sugar cube that has some bitters added to it.
Oh, it's a bitter cube.
Uh-huh. And so just go ahead and plop that right in there. Congratulations. You've made a cocktail.
I made a cocktail.
That's a champagne cocktail.
It's a classic champagne cocktail.
It's a classic champagne cocktail. They've been making these since the mid 1800s. So let's try it.
Chin chin. It's lovely.
It is lovely.
Yeah.
And again, this is the one. If you're like, if you want to just up if you want to go a little bit higher than just serving, let's say, some sparkling, whatever your sparkling wine of choice is at your New Year's Eve party, just get yourself some sugar cubes. And if you have some bitters, just dash some bitters on top of those sugar cubes, have them sitting around, and then just ask everyone to just drop one of those in, and all of a sudden you create the champagne cocktail. And it's exciting because it's beautiful to look at. All of the bubbles come from the sugar cube itself.
Yeah, no, it is gorgeous to look at.
And as it goes along, especially if you use something like Angostura bitters, which have some color to it, as the drink goes along, it gets a little bit more orange. It changes as it goes through. It becomes enjoyable to look at the entire time.
Oh, let's get some photos and some video
that sounds great.
Of these drinks. So what is the champagne cocktail that has brandy and champagne in it? Is that just a variation of this?
I don't know that one. I've never had it.
I think that's...
I mean, there are lots of different things you can do with champagne. Like, there are lots of cocktails that involve champagne.
Yeah.
That must be a more recent one because, again, the classic champagne cocktail really is... I mean, it's quite an old drink. And again, it's based back on the days when they used, like the whole idea of the bitters were that they were medicinal. And so you add some of them to a sugar cube, and I assume also it improves some pretty bad
sparkling wine. Actually, that's a great use for it, right?
No, exactly. And so it's a really pleasant cocktail. And again, I like it because it does a lot of the things that cocktails do, which is that it's enjoyable. It seems a little bit more festive than your normal drink. And it's pretty to look at because you get to watch the bubbles go all up.
Well, all things that we love, right?
Exactly.
Being festive, being pretty to look at.
Exactly. Well, good.
Well, and on that note, I think we should probably conclude, don't you?
Absolutely. All I'd say is, I hope everyone has a wonderful a wonderful New Year's Eve and is looking forward to all the great things in the new year.
All the great things in the new year. And we want to also reiterate our appreciation to all of you for being listeners and for indulging us. And we have some great stuff in store for the new year.
I was going to say, one thing you should be looking forward to in the new year is some of the new great content that we're going to be bringing, the new guests that we bring in. We've already gotten some great ones lined up. We got some fun things that we're going to be doing.
That's it. And as a great holiday song says, this year's for me and you, Kurt.
Absolutely. Excellent.
And on that note, I think we'll take you out. You can follow us on Instagram, on the Twitter, which is now X, or on Facebook. Please encourage others to follow us, and you can email us at mail@theivoryattic.com.
We'd love to hear from you.
Love to hear from you. And thank you so much for being on the episode, Kurt.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Ian Isherwood.
And I'm Kurt Andreessen.
And thank you for rummaging through the Ivory Attic with us.